Okay, part 2, chapter 27, which we're calling we're just calling it Trump, I guess. So, we have a vacuum. We got a big hole, a hole growing bigger and bigger. What's causing the hole? The hole is caused in the middle of the Republican Party for a number of reasons, as I mentioned. The Republicans keep sending feckless candidates to Congress or to the presidency, losing the presidency, or being in Congress and doing nothing. There's no pushback. There's no resistance. George Bush spends 8 years taking a bunch of crap from the left and never dishes it out. We deal with the Clintons never seem to go away. The most scandal-ridden family in history, and they just keep popping up, getting into Senate seats and Secretary of State positions and all this stuff, still spewing their lies. There doesn't seem to be anyone calling a spade a spade. Political correctness has run rampant and even affected how Republicans act. They can't put strong candidates in power. They don't know how to win. The Democrats seem to win on the cultural side, on the culture war, the real war, every time. And this vacuum grows and grows. The Tea Party movement was still a ways away from making any major impact, although they did make an impact in 2010, 11, 12. They did help cause the Republicans to take over Congress and steal it away from the liberals. And then those Congress people end up doing nothing, despite their mandates, despite the Tea Party movement, as organic as they come, as real and grassroots as they come. They still couldn't seem to get out of their own way. They still couldn't, fight back against Obamacare. They couldn't seem to fight back against the most scandalous presidency in history. And you've got a big, fat hole. On one end, you've got the establishment that just wants their power and is willing to concede all sorts of things and do nothing. And the other side, you got the conservatives saying, "What the hell are you people doing or not doing?" And in the middle is this cavern. Obama had we're winding down on the Obama years, and as 6 years became 7 years, became 8 years, it became evident that Obama was probably the worst president in history, at least in terms of certain things, not everything. But he was trying to rival Clinton on the scandal thing. He's recently been going around, and one of the only presidents, probably the only president in history, going around not only barking about his own, patting himself on the back, and barking about his own accomplishments, taking credit for everything. By the way, notice he's trying to take credit for Trump's successes. Notice nobody's trying to take any credit for his. Let that sink in for a while. But he's also the only president going around immediately after being president talking against his successor. Bush didn't talk about Clinton. Clinton really didn't talk about the first Bush 41, who just passed away 3 days ago. Bush didn't talk about Reagan. Reagan didn't talk about Carter. I mean, once they won, there was no more need be said. The other side lost. That says all you need to say. Every now and then they might say this, one little thing here and there over the course, but they'd wait a long time until the president was well established. Obama gave no such respect to Trump, and he's been barking about everything and anything and going on tours, not just going out and helping his candidates try to win in this last election, but going out on talking tours, complaining about Trump and lying about his own record and all sorts of things. It's never been done before, but we're talking about Obama. Obama has broke every rule in the book. Obama was one of the worst presidents for many reasons. One of them, of course, the scandals. And of course, he says, "I'm the only president in modern history who had nobody in his administration indicted." Yeah, that's because, bozo, that's because everybody who would do the indicting was an Obama fight. Obama file? No, Obama fight. I think that's correct. Meaning that all the people who would start an investigation were on your side. And the Congress, the Republicans, when they finally did take control, were too feckless to do anything. That was one of the reasons it caused the hole. You had a Republican Congress that could have started investigations about Fast and Furious, about Benghazi, about a myriad of other scandals, and they did nothing. Absolutely nothing. The only thing they went after was the IRS, and that lady, Lois Lerner, basically pled the fifth when she wasn't even allowed to plead the fifth because she had already made a statement abrogating that right, and they let her off. She basically had no punishment whatsoever, legally speaking. And the hole grows. Of course he has no one indicted. No one was willing to do it. They were his people, Obama's people, or they were feckless Republicans. That's not why. That's the reason he didn't get anyone indicted. Not because no one did any crimes. Not because there was no scandals. The list of scandals is along my freaking leg. Big hole. So what's going to fill it? You had 17 Republican candidates. I mean, talk about filling a hole. 17 Republicans wanted to be president. And they came from everywhere. There were Bushies in there. You know, establishment types. You had guys who were governors. You had guys who were senators, Congress people. You had some of them were like, what? And then you had Donald J. Trump, a businessman, never in politics. And he was the lead dog going in. Why? Because on the right, people felt that he would fill that hole the best. Nature abhors a vacuum, and that vacuum had to be filled. What was it going to be filled with? Well, what was the nature of the vacuum? The vacuum was something that was on the right that was pining for some red meat. It was pining for some pushback. It was pining for somebody who would say, a spade is a spade. Call a spade a spade. Pining for someone who would put Democrats in their place again, once and for all. Something. Pining for a candidate that would not just break under pressure, who would not concede, who would not compromise. The Democrats never do. Why should we? And although I personally thought Ted Cruz was the better man for the job, obviously most Americans thought that Donald Trump was what they actually really wanted to have for this particular moment in time. And you have to be aware of what this moment in time was. This was not your average, ordinary election. And this wasn't your average, ordinary set of circumstances where they were going to consider putting either a socialist in Bernie Sanders on the an avowed socialist on the Democrat ticket, or another Clinton with 40 years of scandal and baggage dragging behind her. And talk about having enough. Enough is enough is enough. I mean, the person they wanted to put into place was probably inappropriate, but was going to check a lot of boxes and give the Republicans a victory on many fronts that they hadn't had in a long time. And the Republicans themselves have no one to blame but themselves by putting feckless people in office and re-electing McCain's and Flakes and Collinses and other, so-called Republicans. And then, of course, the Democrat Party also was to blame for creating this vacuum, because they constantly overreached and they constantly covered for the scandals and rationalized the scandals of Obama. And they started to get all high and mighty, and they started to go low, and they started to do and say things that hadn't been seen in politics for 100 years or more. And they started to do things that were so outrageous, saying things so outrageous, something had to be done. I often think of Trump as Batman. Not because he's a superhero, he's nowhere close to a superhero. But I think of him as Batman in relation to his Batman's role in Gotham City. A lot of people don't like him because he's a vigilante. A lot of taking the law into his own hands, doing things that are a little bit outside the not outside the law maybe, but outside of the morals of society in order to achieve an end. In a way that defines a liberal. The end justifies the means. And then sometimes Batman goes away for a while because he's successful in what he needed to do, and the city needs to heal and go back to doing the normal thing. Well, Trump is kind of like Batman in that way. He's not the guy we need or want. I mean, he's not the guy we want, but he's the guy we need, and maybe even the guy we deserve. For now. And we needed him, and we deserved him because of what created that hole. And so Donald Trump becomes the number one candidate. Now, we also have to explore the environment. Once he became a candidate, the environment on the left, and what started out as a joke, a laugh, a guffaw among the left, and then as it became a more serious threat, how much time, energy, and money the left put into trying to literally destroy Donald Trump before he became president. And of course the atmosphere of the left since he was actually elected. A year and a half before the election, when Trump came down that escalator, the whole world suddenly shifted on its axis, it seems. The left did not take Trump seriously at all. They didn't see him as a threat very much. Not many people did. And they didn't say he had a chance of winning. Early on, before the first Republican debate, right-wing columnist, author, pundit, Ann Coulter, a lovely lady who's a beanbag and a punching bag for the left, who often, gets under their skin and every now and then says something a little wonky, was an early Trump supporter, which was disappointing to me. But she was one of the few people who saw early on what the country needed and who was going to give them what they needed. And she was a member of a panel, or in some talk show, I can't remember what talk show it was, in front of a largely liberal audience, what a shock, and was asked the question, who do you think will win among all those 17 candidates, or however many who who, however many had said they were going to run up to the time of that panel discussion. Maybe not all 17 had declared yet. But she was asked, of the people who's going to win? And she sat there and didn't hesitate. She said, of the people who have declared so far, Donald Trump. And the laughter in the audience was immense. They were beside themselves. They were giggling. Donald Trump. How is this? I mean, look, we don't like Ann Coulter anyway already, but we're actually going to... She actually is dumb enough to think that Donald Trump could possibly win? Her face went stone cold, as often happens when she gets heckled. But she was all serious. It's like you could see inside or through her, you could see her gears working, going, "Wait and see, mofo's. Wait and see. Prove you all wrong. Laugh now. See if you're laughing later." What did she know that the rest of us didn't necessarily know? That Donald Trump was maybe the guy we needed, maybe the guy we deserved. And exactly what so many people on the right were hankering for so long. Who was Donald Trump? Donald Trump was, prior to his candidacy, was a multi-billionaire who was raised by a rich guy, was given, I don't know, it was $1 million or something when he graduated from Wharton School of Business, and built that into an empire. Now, not everyone has $1 million to start with. Of course, there's a lot of people who win $1 million in the lottery or, claiming bankruptcy 2 years later. So let's not, just bag on the man because he was handed $1 million. What did he do with it? What he did was extraordinary. His buildings built all over the world, and lots of other things. Now, but as a person, who is this guy? Well, he is a New Yorker from Queens. He is a street fighter, meaning his personality is to counterpunch. You hit him, he hits back twice as hard. He's a man who speaks his mind, and he's not afraid of who's offended by it. Ooh, there's something different. Politician. Oh, but he's not a politician. He was never in politics. He's a businessman. Famous for buying anything he wanted. Famous for somewhat ruthless, even maybe iffy business practices to get what he wanted, to win. He was a winner. He won. He was successful. But he never lost his roots. He never lost the connection to the common man. He was nicknamed the blue-collar billionaire for a reason. He was, later in life, he liked to buy things, and he ended up owning the, was it Miss America pageant, or Miss America pageant, something like that. And then he, of course, was on television in his reality show where he would be famous for, "You're fired," pretending to hiring people to do something, and if they won, they got to, become project managers on one of his buildings or something, and it took, he went through a lot of people and fired them all because they screwed up or didn't do it his way. He also wrote books, the most famous of which is The Art of the Deal, writing about how he negotiates and how he wins negotiating. And he, of course, all this experience on the business end and negotiating end and having to, write paychecks and meet budgets and pay his taxes and all this other stuff was a large chunk of his experience that would help him as a president. My problem was that I didn't think that a guy who was geared almost 100% from the business side of things without any politics or any political acumen was going to be appropriate, let's say, for the job. And I haven't been proven wrong per se, but he's learned quickly, let's say, on the job. But I always thought he was a little too rough around the edges, and that's why I was not a Trumper. I was a Cruz guy. But this guy was rough and tumble, and he pushed back, and he gave better than he got. This sounds exactly like the recipe of what the Republican Party was looking for in a candidate, and voila, he fit the bill. And that's what Ann Coulter and a lot of other people, Sean Hannity and others, saw and knew would be the case. And we'll continue this discussion in part 3 as to what the Democrats did during his candidacy to try to prevent him from winning. See you then.